The retail industry is one that we all take for granted, but for the millions of people who work within it, it is a complex and multifaceted industry that requires surgical precision on a daily basis. All of this to bring the products that we want and need to us around the world, basically whenever we ask for them. As we head into this new year, 2021, and what is a new normal, it is clear that the retail industry is rapidly changing. For the workforce behind the scenes, this means that the importance of making data-based decisions is more important than it ever has been. And that's exactly what we will be talking about today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Anyline, Anytime. My name is Marc Babin. So great to see you all watching today. And today I am honored and proud to welcome, there's no better way to put it, a legend in the retail industry to the Anyline podcast. Gary, so great to have you. Gary's joining us. He has 35 years of experience advancing through ownership and innovation, and now as a global leader and a consultant. Gary Hawkins breathes retail. And as I mentioned, it's an honor to have you with us today, Gary. Thank you so much for getting up, and great to see you again.
No, Marc, great to see you and great to be with you today.
Brilliant. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into it. We'll walk right into the center aisle, as they say. So let's get into it. And I'd love to start off by talking about why retail operators need to adopt this concept of making data-based decisions, and more so, why it's so important in this new normal that we find us in. And I guess this is really not industry specific. It could be grocery, it could be electronics, home and consumer goods, any type of retail. I think it's pretty safe to say that being able to make data-based decisions in the future is really going to have a significant impact on both revenue and customer engagement. I think that's fair to say, right?
Absolutely. You know, if we look really at any retail sector, retail is a thin profit margin business. And, you know, is, again, no matter what vertical we look at, it is heavily dependent upon operations, of execution, and cost control, right? And the only way to do that is to have data, good data, and a lot of data. So yes, to your point, there's really two sides to this. There's the sales side and growing revenue and growing turnover and so on, and using data to do that intelligently. But there's also the use of data for maintaining costs and controls and so on. And, you know, that's really the way this industry has developed over the decades. Looking forward, though, I think data becomes even more important. You know, as I wrote about in my recent paper, Retail 4.0, data really underlies the future here in two important areas. The first is the automation through software of different business processes. Across the enterprise, you know, processes in marketing, processes in merchandising, HR, and so on. The other area data is going to be increasingly important in is digital value creation. You know, traditional retailers have largely sat out on this whole world of digital value creation that digital natives like Google, like you know, Facebook, and many others, Amazon, perfect example, right, have capitalized on. But from my perspective, traditional retail looking forward does have an opportunity to participate in this game. But again, data underlies all this.
Yeah, and I guess the ability to have that data more accessible will open doors that perhaps weren't there in the future. So that's a really great point. So let's look at this way that we can encourage retail operators to look at things in a more proactive approach versus a reactive. Because I think a lot of retailers get caught in that spin cycle of having to react to everything that happens all the time because they simply don't have that data to be proactive. So being able to anticipate trends, plan for various situations, and even building more customer engaging programs, I think it's safe to say again that all of this can be done if retailers can really have the confidence on the data that they capture, their own owned confidence and data.
No, that's correct. And that really leads into another really important area and timely topic here is this notion of, you know, first party data versus second and third party data. I think retailers, and again, we can speak broadly here across a lot of different retail sectors, are fortunate in the sense, they have a lot of shoppers, they have a lot of customers, often a lot of transactions, and a gold mine of data. And all of that is first party data. That's data the retailer owns, controls, and more often than not, they have that direct relationship with the shopper. Right? So many other businesses are reliant on second party or even third party data. And with all the discussion going on in the world today around privacy, data security, and all these other related issues, that world is coming under more and more pressure. I think we are going to see the whole notion of, cookies, embedded on websites begin to go away. The whole ability to rely on second and third party data is going to continue to weaken. And from my perspective, again, I think that puts retailers in a very good place.
And really more of an important place for them to own that data as well, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking about that proactive approach, again, obviously owning this data gives them more confidence to have a proactive strategy. But it really affects the entire retail operations, from inventory management to the employees on the floor, even the customers walking in the front door. Being able to anticipate situations just keeps things running smoother. And from a cost benefit perspective, I mean, you're going to have first person experience with this, but it really gives you a competitive edge.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, I think there's two areas you just touched on here that I think are worth calling out.
Mm-hmm.
The first is around operations. And this is an area we're going to see, I think, develop fast and at scale here. It's been talked about for some time now, the physical store becoming digitized, right? And retailers being able to understand customer behavior within the four walls of that store, similar to how they do, understanding a shopper's digital behavior on a website or other interactions. That understanding, when applied to the physical store, can be incredibly powerful. Understanding, the number of shoppers coming in the door, what aisles they're going up and down, where they're dwelling, in front of what categories, purchase conversion rates, and so on. That can be incredibly powerful information for those that understand it. And even taking that a step further is then linking that kind of data with merchandising activity in the store. So truly understanding the impact of that special display or that end of aisle display or that signage in the middle of the aisle and so on that customer behavior. The other thing you mentioned, Mark, was inventory data. And real-time inventory data is becoming more and more important. Obviously to help feed demand signals with computer-assisted ordering, that type of thing. But where I'm having discussions lately is retailers connecting real-time data information to their e-commerce websites, so that rather than a shopper ordering a product only to find out when that order is being filled that, there's no product available, and that order picker having to either text or call the shopper to understand what to substitute, or maybe there is no substitute and that shopper's disappointed when they finally get their order. Eliminating all of that headache by connecting real-time inventory data to the e-com site and simply not presenting that product, or at least informing the shopper, hey, gee, sorry, that product's not available right now.
Yeah, I think we see the larger retailers perhaps have this a bit more under control because they have the budget and the team behind it. But for the thousands of smaller operators, you're completely right. To go onto a store, click on something, put it in your shopping cart, and then say, oh, it's not available anymore. That's a huge, from a customer point of view, a very negative impact.
Yes. And I think there's a nuance to what you just said. Absolutely, larger retailers have the resources to do this, but I also see significant differences between retail sectors or verticals here. Apparel companies, sporting goods, electronics, many of those channels have had real-time inventory systems in place for some years now. So they're in pretty good shape. Where I'm seeing this lacking and hence an opportunity, is in more of the fast-moving consumer goods sectors. So think, supermarkets, grocery stores, hypermarkets, drugstores, pharmacies, that type thing. There's challenges there. The typical supermarket may have 40 or 50,000 different SKUs. A hypermarket could be double that. That's a challenge to keep all that data and maintain that real time, but it can be done.
And I guess if someone's looking at the bottom of the mountain looking up, that's a huge mountain to climb. And I guess we'll get into it in a few questions here, but the technology and the innovations that are perhaps presented that can help them get there. But it certainly would be, like you said, a massive opportunity for them to get on this train as quickly as possible.
Well, and I think not only an opportunity, but so many of these things very quickly go from, gee, it'd be nice to have that, to have to have that to meet consumer expectations and shopper expectations. And, as we know, the world of technology is moving faster and faster every day. And increasingly, what a retailer has to deliver is being driven by consumer and shopper expectations, not necessarily just by operational needs. And, that means that bar is being raised at a faster and faster rate, and retailers have to keep up with that.
That whole concept of good isn't good enough. It's one of my favorites with this. It's very true. And I think this year put a real spotlight on it.
Absolutely.
Which is, again, opportunity, but again, a mountain to climb. So no, that's brilliant. So I think up to this point, we've proven for the listeners, I think that the need for making database decisions is of vital importance. Gives you the confidence to make decisions, but it also helps to clear that fog when looking to the future and that uncertainty. So you mentioned it previously, your new document, Retail 4.0, The Age of Metamorphosis, which I love the name. It's a really, really good read, and I'll make sure the link is available for those watching today, but I really enjoyed it. There was one section that I'd really like to highlight. I think it lends itself perfectly to this discussion, and that's planning in a time of exponential change, because we are in a time when how do you plan when tomorrow is different in an hour? So I really love that. There's a section I'd love to quickly read for the listeners, I guess as a teaser for them so they can go download it. So it says, retail industry executives are in the unenviable position of having to commit themselves and their organizations to an unknown future. Many realize that transformation and disruption are increasing and that they must change. Others may even have some sense of where they want to go, deploying various automations and committing to exponential value creation through digital transformation, but they're unsure of how to get there. So I really love that, because it does highlight that the industry wants to move forward, but it seems like for some, perhaps they feel like there's a wall in front of them and they just simply can't scale it. So I guess in order to clear that path for a more certain future, that's where we can talk more about this innovation, the tools, the technology, the new processes and innovations that can really help them to remove that barrier.
Yes. Yeah. And, it's fascinating. Different retailers of all sizes I talk with every day. Many of them here in the US, but others, in different international markets. We tend to see a lot of extremes. Some retailers, and again, I can include some significant retailers in this bucket, are so overwhelmed, they just, in a sense, almost bury their head in the sand and don't want to deal with anything, right? And hope it all just goes away, and it's a bad dream. The other end, though, extreme, we see are retailers that are buying every new shiny object that comes out, every new innovation, every new technology capability, they're trying to lock up and put in place and so on. And without any real strategic thought behind what they're trying to accomplish. It's just, they don't want to be left behind. That creates a lot of other problems with, having to integrate different systems, overlap among systems, a lot of extra cost and so on, and no real focus to that. We spend a fair amount of our time as we work with retailers, helping them understand, what are the key systems capabilities they have in place today, and then alongside each of those, helping them understand, here's what best in class looks like today. But more importantly, here are the capabilities in this area we think you're going to need looking out 3, 4, 5 years into the future. And this is a classic case and a classic time of retailers when they think of new technologies and capabilities of having to, skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is at this moment, right? Best in class today is not going to be best in class 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And so, a lot of the time we spend with retailers is focused around that, and then helping them understand how some of these different pieces fit together. Again, today, more importantly, tomorrow, so they can begin putting those right pieces in place.
I appreciate the hockey analogy. I just want to point that out. As a Canadian, I grew up on the ice, so that's perfect. I love it. So you brought up an interesting point there. Something I'd love to just quickly dive into is things that maybe people focus more on when they shouldn't focus as much on them, and things on the contrast of that don't get enough attention that should. So you just mentioned one there of people trying to do too much, get every new tool in the book. It's the content creator who wants to be everywhere. Is that the most common, or do you see other things that retailers focus too much attention on?
So I see both extremes, right? Either retailers overwhelmed, not doing anything, some other retailers trying to do everything. And then, for probably the majority of retailers in the middle, they are making decisions, but they're making those decisions without in many cases, without a solid understanding of the technology, the implications of these new capabilities, and where that space is going, right? I'll give you a good example. I'm talking to several retailers recently. And again, these are not small retailers. These are, mid-sized regional chains that are really trying to understand, how does e-commerce capabilities fit together with their loyalty programs? How does all that fit together with marketing personalization? How does that fit together with pricing personalization and so on? How do all these digital pieces come together? And, it's from the retailer's perspective, it's not an easy thing to deal with, because obviously solution providers are always saying, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we've got great capabilities here. So retailers need to see past that and understand some of these core pieces. But it's a real challenge for retailers to sort through all the capabilities that are out there and develop a strategic vision for where they're going. And, to link that back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which you mentioned, all this in a time of exponential growth of technology and innovation. And I think that if there was one issue that I had to point to across the broader retail industry globally today, it's that, from my perspective, most retail executives do not understand the implications of that exponential growth, right? We all know the term. We read it, read about it every day, practically. We probably even use the term ourselves, talking to different people and so on. But the core issue is human beings have developed in a very linear, localized world, right? We have not grown up in a world of exponential change. And because of that, it's a really hard concept for human beings to understand. But the implications of that are really profound. And I think it's that. If I had to pick one issue, it's that I think retail executives need to get their head around and focus on.
Okay. So that transitions really well right into the next point. And that's where do you see retailers needing to get started? So obviously, I think a lot of what we're saying here is don't go buy everything, don't go get everything. And it's to really look at your own operations and develop a strategy. Is that really the basic step one for a lot of retailers?
Yes, yeah, it is. And, tying into our conversation here today, the foundation of any of this, the bedrock of any of this is data. And, the first place retailers go when they think of data is product data. right? And that is critically important today. And where it's becoming more important is not just having, the basic characteristics of a product. What category does it belong to? What color is it? How much, what's the retail price of it? What's the cost of it? But more and more sophisticated and extensive attributes, right? Where's that product made or sourced? Sustainability information and how that product is manufactured, packaged, and makes its way through the supply chain. These are all things consumers and shoppers want to know today. In the food industry, right? What ingredients are in that product? And often it's far more than the few things you see on the side of the package.
Unfortunately,
on the nutrition panel, right? So it's all these extensive data attributes on the product side. But just as important, and in my mind, I think ultimately more important, is customer data, right? Knowing who are my customers, when are they shopping, what products are they purchasing, are they shopping online, in the store, how often do they shop, all those things. And all this comes together to really help sophisticated retailers develop a true view to their individual shoppers, right? Understanding the attributes of all the products that shopper buys helps me understand, that shopper maybe has a interest in a vegan lifestyle, or they've got a health condition that they're trying to purchase the right food for. Those insights become incredibly powerful in how a retailer can go to market.
And really just switching that perspective from we're in control to I need to listen to what the customer's telling me or willing to tell me so I can make better decisions for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Right on top of the head. Well, good. Fantastic discussion. I think we've really well given the audience force the issue that data is most important, and it has to be, no matter what aspect you're in, no matter which aspect of retail or industry of retail, whether you're large, medium, or small, the need for, like you said, product and customer data is of vital importance as exponential change continues to get, tomorrow is going to be 10 times worse than today. So we're going to have to deal with it each step of the way, but this new normal has really put a big a stick in the wheel of the bicycle. So people need to be on top of it. No, that's perfect. Even just preparing for the interview today, speaking with you previously, I've learned so much. A lot of this stuff I wouldn't have even thought of. So really, really great insight. And I appreciate you being here. And yeah, I guess that status quo is just not good enough anymore. I think that's probably the best way to wrap it.
It's not. Retailers can no longer stand still or move at the pace they have historically moved at. Today, retailers, again, no matter what sector, have to respond to the shopper and that consumer. And that consumer has quickly changing and increasing expectations of what they want from the retailers they do business with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Nice way to wrap it up. Good. So before we sign off, anything final that you wanted to touch on before we sign off today?
I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Mm-hmm. I guess just one comment in closing. Again, I talk to a lot of retailers that are overwhelmed, or they just, the environment today gives them headache after headache. I guess I look at it from another perspective that, all these new technologies, all this new innovation, all these new capabilities flooding into the industry give retailers opportunity to really change the way they do business, to be creative in how they go to market and how they meet their shoppers. And so while it's an incredibly challenging time, I think it's also an incredibly exciting time of opportunity for retailers that, can think differently and get excited about all this new innovation.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The tools are there. We just have to have a strategy before we use every single one.
Yes.
Good. Well, perfect. Again, Gary, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your insights. I hope the audience has as well. I know I certainly have. And if that translates anything to those listening, I know we've done a great job here today. So again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time today.
No, great to be with you.
Great. And to everyone watching, again, thank you so much for being with us today to listen to this great discussion about the retail industry and why making database decisions is so important. Hopefully lots for you to take away as well, perhaps put some action steps into place. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, you can go ahead and reach out to Gary or myself. I'll make sure the LinkedIn links are above the video. You can go check those out. We'll also give you access to Retail 4.0 from Gary. Definitely recommend that you go give it a read. Tons of insights that'll certainly have you itching to get moving into this new normal of retail. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Anyline anytime. But until then, as always, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll see you soon.